dark.
How about the truth or consequences?
Truth or consequences? I don't know if we ever competed.
Did you ever do children's shows?
Did we do children's shows?
Which is the original Big Bird?
We didn't do Sesame Street or anything like that. Did we?
Captain Kangaroo?
Captain Kangaroo.
No, but seriously, the biggest question I have for you after not seeing you for a long time is, did you ever expect you'd become a regular person? Robert's a doctor. I mean, he went from being a hippie.
Yeah, that's really.
And you heard Baba pleased that he's got a job. That's immortal.
He had a job.
To say that now he's a renowned Chinese medicalist. And
Speaking all over the world.
Alan has...
He's back in elixirs and potions.
Yes. The sanskars never changed.
This takes a change form.
Just the quality of his potions improved a great deal.
Mine are legal now. They're good for you.
Traveling overland then.
No, the days are gone.
Right, and this guy, who was absolute idealist in spiritual states most of the time, is now
Kansas.
in the belly of corporate America, helping them,
And boy, does it think.
helping them sell products. All these lessons, though.
To me, that's the irony of Baba's way and the mystery of it. That you heard Robert say, "To my horror, Baba sent me back to the West." He had set off to spend the rest of his life, or at least the next year or so,
Several years, yeah.
Several years.
considerable period of time until who knows what, in India and beyond. And all of us have been forced, as you all know, in your own lives, to find Baba in the midst of all of the pressures and activities of this world. And it astonishes me, the world has become so fast, so reliant on technology. And you see the work that the Mongoli did without that technology, the work of the travel that Baba did with the limited means at that time. And he said, all of this is only for my work. And it intrigues me that as we grow more and more reliant on these technologies, the most important tools he's left us are his name and his image. That book that Robert described coming to Baba with, the God-Man, it was so intriguing in those early descriptions of Baba setting out with his men, and they would repeat the name of God, each one of them different one according to their religion, for 100,000 times, or for the 12 hours, or the length of the walk, or whatever. And I always thought, my God, that was a fascinating thing. And then, as years passed, became more and more aware that he's given us that gift, his name, that in the midst of all of our difficulties, all of our world responsibilities, his name is that miracle. Maybe Allah can pray and say, God Almighty, make this happen, but I don't know any of the rest of us who do that with consistency. But one thing happens with consistency, and that was calling upon him. He hears, and his presence is there. So we have him. And I also think we have overstayed our welcome.
No.
Yeah.
We have until 11.
You have until 11?
Yeah.
I better call my driver.
I have a question for Alan, and I've never thought of this question before, but it occurs to me to ask you, have you ever been envious that everybody else got to meet Baba but you?
Yeah, sure.
Well, you met Baba.
Yeah. Yes, but it also, the way I met Baba, and of course Rick was there, was extremely helpful. I think for me to be able to say to other people who had not met Baba in the body that one could still connect with him in the most profound way, and feel that was true. The Mandali sometimes, although I think in the case of Rick and Robert, it was different. The people who had been around Baba for a long time, found it very difficult to relate to him as God. They knew he was God, they believed he was God, but their experience was with him as a man. And that loss was very difficult. And I remember Mandali saying how lucky some of the Westerners are who have not met him and are able to experience him purely as God. Not that I wouldn't have loved to have that opportunity, but just being there at that time was probably all I could take and still stay in my body. Otherwise, who knows?
It reminds me,
Telegram you ever received, you have that?
of course,
Relatively late, I lost it.
it's the last letter.
69.
Don't lose your thought of what it reminded you of.
Yeah. Yeah, why don't you read it out?
Is this one? This is February, it can't be February 69, can it? How could that be?
It's going to be a trick.
Well, you're the first to hear this one.
Transcendent normal time.
This was
That was when it was received, not necessarily when it was sent.
February 14th. Is it? All right, here's the
It's the 68.
Huh? Oh, 68. Right. Yeah, I couldn't.
You thought it was
I didn't have
69.
my glasses. That was February 69. This is February 68. It was to Rick in Oakland. Registered letter 7th received. That would have been the 7th of February. Announcement from Meher Baba: in seclusion and report may be very happy. Account of 3-speaker experiment amused me in my seclusion. My love to you, Alan Bob, stop. My love blessing to all who hear of my love through you 3. Meher Baba, and that was February 14 of 68. Well, you got some, Rick, you got some after that, didn't you?
I have no correspondence with me, so I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure that there was correspondence at that time, but Robert, you had...
Oh, I just reminded me of a quick anecdote having to do with a wonderful old man, alas, gone, named Padre. In the early days, before the Pilgrim Center was open, when the first Westerners came to stay at Mehrabad, things were less defined than they have since become. And it wasn't unusual for a couple of guys coming back from their work at the trust office to sleep in Mehrabad to stop and have a couple of beers and arrive after dark. Padre set the tone for how everyone would be at Mehrabad. So one of these Westerners was coming back one evening. It already turned dark. They were trying not to make any noise because they didn't want to disturb Padre. And Padre heard them anyways and called out, "Who's there?" And the guy said, "Nobody." And Padre's comment was, "You're not nobody yet, mister."
Alan, I think you're very fortunate. I tell you why. Because every time you had to go and talk about Baba, didn't you say to yourself that you had to live the example? Right? Because how else can you talk about Baba without being the example? So you were forced to live by Baba's dictates because you were going to talk about it. I mean, you had to be an example in order to talk about Baba. So that forced you to live according, to his wishes, because you knew you were going to be his example.
Well, I don't know about that. I think that if you take the totality of the Baba Boys' talks in those days, unrestrained, confident arrogance of the perfect life was probably not one of the characteristics. And the fact that Baba could get his message through one, despite one's limitations, and despite the fact that we were not, we weren't nobody yet, we weren't perfectly living Meher Baba's constant 100% remembrance and loving essence at all times, I think it's probably safe to say. And that was part of the beauty of it, that
We wouldn't have nearly as many female disciples if, Baba lovers, if Alan. No.
What I'm saying is that Baba would use every part of you to draw people, whatever worked in those days, right?
Your point is an excellent one, and to me, I knew we should have stopped a little early.
You're right. This part has been editable.
The dynamic between telling Baba's message and living his message is one that applies to every Baba lover, whether you speak about him or not. And naturally, you're a little bit more on the hot seat if you purport to be telling others about his message. But you're no less on the hot seat if you just, unless you're a complete hermit with respect to your Baba loverness, you have to uphold him in your life. And none of us can do that perfectly. It's a case of having to strive. And when you don't do it perfectly, that means there's an imperfect portion that may be the biggest portion of your life or the smallest portion of your life or the 50-50 portion of your life that is not upholding him. But he gives us that chance when we awaken from our own mini Mahapralayas every day to strive to close the gap a little bit, invoke his grace.
And Baba does say, don't give me all of your goodness and all of your perfections. Give me all of your imperfections.
Yeah, thank God.
Rick and Robert, can you tell us very briefly, after you met Baba, what happened to you? How did you change? Did you notice changes in you when you came back? And then did you notice what happened exactly? What changed in you? That was very specific.
I don't think that for me, that it had to do as much with the actual meeting of Baba. It was the coming to Baba within me, acknowledging that he is, and that he is within all of us. It was a tremendous joy, feeling of joy that he was in the world again, and that it was incumbent upon me to find him and be with him if possible, and certainly to try to do what he requested, which was to live the life that he would be proud of, that would please him. And that hasn't shifted at all. In my own internal life, being with Baba was the most important event in the dream of my life, without question. It's one that grows more vivid with time, not less. But it's still that knowing that he's, as he said to me, he said, "I'm with you all the way." It wasn't just all the way coming across the different countries. It was with you all the way in the journey to him within us. We all are. That's his assurance to all of us. So I think drawing on that and making that a guiding principle by which to live one's life is to feel heartened, to feel comforted, and to feel guided. That in the shore, as he says, it is a fact that I've come among you. That fact is and continues and always will be, and it's other than that, all I feel is my own the great fortune was given by him. It was nothing that I deserved, and I'm forever grateful to him.
To me, the amazing part is that you don't explode or implode upon meeting Baba. The amazing part is that he somehow puts a cover over the experience in such a way that it's possible to continue and still be yourself in your own limited way. It seems so obvious that he could change all that the moment you meet him, you disappear as yourself and become him. But the game he plays is such that he has you continue to be yourself. And it is, of course, infinitely frustrating, if somewhat familiar, tediously familiar. And all the things that Robert said remind me of there is no way to express the excitement, the upliftment, and the enduring support that comes from contact with Baba, whether it's a contact in his form or a contact as you've all experienced in some way coming to him inwardly. And the proof of that is, of course, so many of Baba's lovers have not met him personally and feel that experience. But it's really much the same in everyone's life except for that indescribable memory. I would say that it is exactly the same. The avatar's ability to change anybody, to touch anybody, doesn't depend upon his physical presence or your being in his physical presence. So really, this meeting in person is a bonus that can't be denied in its uniqueness and specialness, but it has nothing to do with his work with us. Or maybe I should say it has everything to do with his work with us and nothing to do with our relationship with him. Whatever it is, the real work is always after meeting him. The real work comes after meeting him internally or externally. You must, I meet him in person and he says, you must strive to see me as I really am. If you understand that correctly, you've taken the long road through your many lifetimes and come face to face with the avatar. And he says, I've got a new map for you, and it is to find me as I really am. How wonderful that you found me as you see me. But now you must strive to find me as I really am. So that's the boat we're in. And it's a very fine boat indeed.
Fine voting.
With great companions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you.
I hope it's not another 30 years before.
It better not be.
That will be
Two of the Three
true
Musketeers will be at Bronxville. At what time, Angela? 12 o'clock sharp. And as we announced previously, I'll be over there for just a few minutes for anyone who needs car directions. And that way I can give them all at once instead of giving them 15 times. And the bookstore is open. And people who want to meet our guests personally, please go ahead and do that to the extent that you...
I'd like to meet you personally.
We have to see.
No, but where I should leave you, wait here?
Let me see about the car first.
I said I should wait you here?
Yeah.
This By the way, I felt quite, oh my God, I am, the national, you know, he asked me, is this going to be
You still filming?
So that we can hesitate to do maybe that's part of what's going on.
You know, one of the expressions is sweeping up the dust comes.
Whoever needs directions, I'm giving them now.
Let me say hello to...
We need direction. We need
You're
Every time, of course. I'm offering to drive. It looks like it goes like really fast. So go as slow as you can with this.
I think we might know immediately when this camera was turned over to unobtrusive. I want my wife to be able to say
Getting email from Tina.